welcome from the two of us. I would say this is a co-hosted webinar between me and Matt, talking about composability. Should we sort out our names first, Matt?
It's going to be tough because we have redundancy covered, right?
Yeah.
It's multiple mats. So I'll let you start first, and I'll dive.
Yeah. What can I say? I'm just mini you with one T less. It's and I this morning I'm calling in from Denver actually, so looking out at the beautiful mountains here. I went to a yoga session this morning, and it's always confusing to be Matt in a yoga studio. So actually, I don't know if you can see that, but that is a bin, and it said "Mats go here." I even climbed up to the and tried to take a picture, but I couldn't. So it's a little bit confusing, but that's rare.
So Matt, that's actually what we would refer to as physical personalization.
Yes, it is. It is. They do that. So that's but I refer to myself as Matt. So we two Matts as it is.
Yeah, perfect.
So quick intro. Again, I can start. I have the pleasure and the honor to be a CEO for Umbraco. I've been here since September last year, so it's a little bit more than a year, and it's been an extremely interesting year of get to know the company and the industry, and specifically also the open source, which I haven't worked with before, and the whole community, the superpower of our organization. So that's where I'm normally based in Denmark, but traveling a lot this week and last week I've been in the US. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, I probably know some of you that are on the call, and it's great to be here with you, Matt, as well. I am based in Winter Park, Florida, so I don't have the same view that you have, but it is probably a few degrees warmer here. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Garpy. I am affectionately referred to as the Chief Critic at CMS Critic. We are a media platform that focuses, I'd say, very exclusively on CMS outward. So that's sort of our hub, and other technologies that we do cover sort of serve as the spokes in our orbit. But we really try to take a very careful, mindful, thoughtful approach to how we analyze things. And I'd like to position CMS Critic as being the town square for leadership. We really invest a lot in the conversations with people who are building the technologies, but also who are leading the companies behind them. So it's an opportunity to be able to share their stories, their roadmap, their vision. In terms of my background, I'm sort of at this weird intersection of having owned a digital agency for 17 years, having worked on the product side from an engineering and development perspective, but then also being really close to the sales motion of how we sell CMS, how we sell enterprise technology. And of course, a lot of that has to do with marketing and marketers. So all of this stuff is very near and dear to me. And that's given me, I think, an interesting perspective on being able to look at the marketplace, look at how these technologies fit into the way that businesses and enterprises are utilizing them. And I spent a lot of time on the road at a lot of different industry events. I talked to a lot of vendors. So it's always an opportunity for me to learn, but then also be able to have that transaction and exchange with people in the community about what I'm seeing from an analyst perspective. So excited to be here, excited to talk about, as Matt said, composability, this whole topic that is something I've been very close to for the last, well, really probably 5 years or so, as it's sort of become part of our lexicon.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's always good to chat with you. We've had chats along the way, both off formally and informally of that. So it's a pleasure to be here. Really good, and also still a hot topic, as you say, right? It's been on the agenda for quite many years. But I usually say I'm not old, but I've been around, and also in other industries, and I've seen that pattern in previous and in other industries and other ecosystems also. It kind of repeats itself. kind of a hype, kind of getting into, but still, a number of years after, there's still, for those concepts that disappear after 2 or 3 years, they were just simply not a concept that had any content in it. It was just a buzzword. I worked for IBM many years, and IBM were masters in getting up with these. There was the way they thought they were leading and driving the world by having new concepts that no one could understand. People out in the markets didn't know. There were a concept of smarter planet where everything should be included. It was on a level that no one understood it. That kind of disappears. But those frameworks like composability and Mac alliances and all those things that we will discuss a little bit here in the call here is something that's absolutely relevant, and it brings business value to it, and it sorts out problem and issues. But it's kind of the angle to it, and how disciplined there is, and what can you expect. And some of the old facts are still there around data quality, around how you integrate, what is your business processes, how do you integrate teams, and all those things, which we will cover a little bit later on here. So yes, it's still very relevant. And from our side also, we're not the fastest one. We have our community that we carefully develop things together with. We're now releasing our Compose product, which is what we call for real. So out of this, there are things, composability for real, bring it down to things that apply and works. So let's touch upon that a little bit later. Kind of a tee up, right?
Yeah, no, it's a perfect tee up. And I think, just to kind of go back to setting expectations, the part of the mission for this call, and hopefully we're able to educate and enlighten people who are participating, is around this idea of complexity, or rather complexity with composability, right? How are we addressing that root issue? Is it possible to get there without so much complexity? We're going to dig into that. I think from a couple of different angles, and you've done a nice job of framing where we're actually going to do that, opening some of those doors already. I want to go back to what you said about IBM. I was a contractor with IBM through my agency for the better part of 4 years. On the content side, on the security side. So I was writing white papers, technical documents, creating content around cybersecurity initiatives for GTS. And I can validate what you're saying, that there's very much a disconnect at times around how we market things. And I think that's also part of the secret sauce for how, as a business, an enterprise brings its products to market, it has to sell the sizzle, right? And when we actually get into cooking the steak, it ends up being a lot more complicated than we think. The recipe isn't just as simple as, throwing it on the grill. There's a lot of steps involved in doing it the right way. I think that's an off-the-cuff food analogy for the complexity that we often run into with composable. And I think the root word compose is very important too when we think about what it is that we're actually doing. And if you take that back to the challenge we have even in our own industry of defining what a DXP is, right? Is it actually certainly the analysts say it's a category, but is it actually a product? Right? An enterprise can build its own DXP, right? Its own digital experience platform for delivering. And this is really this idea of composing different best of breed technologies to deliver that solution based on the use case. Pre-composed would be the products that exist out in the market that fit the way the analysts see a composition for digital experience tools. So there's definitely been in the 5 years I've been following this, in the years I've been a member of the Mock Alliance's executive advisory board, kind of as an outside analyst, looking at what's happening, providing insight. I would say that the big challenge has been the word itself, understanding what does it mean? How do we define it? Can we come to some consensus? And that's hard when you have one part of the market talking about it being a very pure interpretation about what it means and how we validate that. And then the other side saying, well, we want to be a little bit looser in the way that we orient around it so that we provide a kind of decoupled sense around the way that we deliver our products. It isn't, there aren't stringent guidelines by which you need to operate. And that's, of course, created confusion for people to kind of understand what it means and where the value is. I wonder, as I toss this back to you, when you think about how, as a product ecosystem with Umbraco, how have you thought about, the challenge of being able to frame, and obviously you have Compose now coming, so you're embracing it your own way, but how have you framed it over the years?
Yeah, and I think this has been the uncertainty as you describe it here is that's the reason why we haven't really cut through and see what is our product that we want to do. How do we approach this? We have our the management API and the openness is which you can build composability on top of our product, and we have many of them. We're headless, fully headless. We have a lot of installations that is doing that, so we can do this already as it is. But if we just go back to just one fraction that you said there when it comes to which kind of the point of it is the best of breed. I mean, that has happened. And that I don't know who said that first, but it's many, many years ago. So this has been in various industries, various parts of it. Best of breed is coming in, but it's never really worked because it depends. It depends what is best of breed. That implies that best of breed for you. What is the best application for you to use that? For certain, you chop it up instead of having big, massive monolith as it is. It could be an SAP, it could be a Salesforce, could be anything like that. And then now there's some in this industry that's also having the same type of product history and product maturity and product in the life cycle being very big systems. How do you break that up to smaller pieces in order to get the best of breed? And that varies. Because if there were a recipe for everyone, there would be just a set of here's the best commerce product, here's the best checkout model, here's the best personalization model, here's the one for it. But one thing that I've learned over the year is that all customers are different and it's very different of what their needs are. So best of breed is where you start to understand what's the best for us. Yeah. And for that, we are open, we have that. But what we've seen and what we're now approaching is the whole ingestion of data. What we see commonalities in a lot of projects is that you, in one way or another, you build a data layer. A data layer could be a lot of things, but in one way or another, in a little bit more complicated installations and development projects, there's a data layer. You need to extract certain things from various sources, could be many or just one or a couple of them. And that data layer is built bespoken with some direct APIs and connections, point-to-point integrations. And then they kind of reuse, when they pitch it and when where partners are pitching for new clients, they say, we have this, but it's still bespoken and they still kind of maintain and develop as it is. That we address with Compose. So I got a question from a partner saying that when they saw Compose, we're already working with an API layer and an integration system. It's not an integration. It's not that we're building a new messaging hub. This is an extract. So we kind of take a stake in there, this extracting, getting that into an information layer as it is, the Compose, and then be able to, with GraphQL, be able to just address and do that without knowing the subsystem. So you get simplicity in that. You make it faster. You standardize it. But it's one part of it in the composability as it is. Open up for opportunity to create that layer. And that has resonated extremely well when we now with our community sounding that, and we're also then now getting it available for it. And what I think we can see where we hit the nail here is that people are reflecting differently on this. They suddenly see, well, that is absolutely ingestion extractions, and you do that in a very good way, do that seamlessly, be able to shift out systems. But then someone said that this is going to be more of a migration tool. So composability is a broad thing. It's an operating where you built the system, but it's also composability can be used when you do migrations, where you gradually shift out old systems. It's just a matter to keep track of it. So that's the way we approach it, that we have taken a cut and a stake in there.
Yeah, I think I want to go back to what you said about best of breed too, because I think there's an important distinction there relative to how it's been framed in the messaging and telegraphed to the market through, industry boards like or groups like the Mock Alliance, which are really advocacies with, organizationally, they have members who have agreed to what these standards are from a base architecture perspective, and they meet those requirements. And for those that aren't familiar, the MOC acronym historically has been around microservices being API first, cloud, headless SaaS delivery, all of those things kind of, combined together with a lot of granularity around how that's assessed and scored. And again, it's a set of standards around what would end up being called best of breed tools in their ecosystem, their marketplace. But your distinction is an important one because best of breed applies to what is the best tool for your use case, for your enterprise, for your business. And it doesn't have to be a product that is highly visible, that is, got a brand that everyone knows. It's a quote unquote household name, if there is such a thing outside of Salesforce and a few other tools in our industry that are household names, but it doesn't have to necessarily have that visibility. The underlying structure, the approach of being able to utilize these tools at scale, to be able to not worry about version control, to have that SaaS delivery, to have the headlessness, all things that you just spoke about that Umbraco delivers as part of its ecosystem. These were the more important tenets of how the substructure was enabling whatever tool it was that you were going to work with. And the other part you talked about was bringing legacy along for the ride, because it wasn't just about modernizing stacks to these, awesome new tools. It was about what about the legacy stuff I have back here? What about the data that has to meet compliance by existing in this kind of an ecosystem, which may be highly siloed? How do we get access to that and bring that forward? And this is where concepts like orchestration have really come into their own as vehicles for being able to enable the aggregation, the normalization of things, and make it much easier for us to be able to port them into different channels. And as you said, do it in a piecemeal way. I've seen this done successfully through Mock Alliance examples where a customer like the Vitamin Shop, as an example, I judge the impact awards every year for the Mock Alliance, and they were a great use case. I actually talked to the guy who's heading up, Uman Chang, who's heading up their internal initiative around composable commerce. And the way he explained it to me is this was all about enabling microservices in the cloud so they could take a measured process, a measured approach to how they were rolling out their composable commerce strategy. And it was not just month, I think it was probably a multi-year process. And it was also
did you go mute?
How about now?
That's better. Yeah, we just bought 20,000 words for you, and you used them. So, but we bought another 20,000. Now we come in batches here. So just a cheaper way to do Zoom.
Right, right.
So you ran out of your pod. So thank you for that, Matt. We no, keep on going. Keep on going. You weren't. Maybe it was only for me, but yeah.
If I circle back to the underlying concepts of being able to the example of the Vitamin Shop and having a staged process where they were able to, with predictability, move microservices to the cloud, have a way of shuttling one application requirement at a time, test it, move it through a process, have the proper pipelines built, have the QA built into everything. And the way he explained it to me is it wasn't just about the technology, it was about the people. He had to bring his team up to speed on where they were going. He had to get buy-in from executives. I think when we think about composable, it's not just the technology, it's the business optics, it's the requirements from a team in terms of how we do this and how we do it together. And that mindset piece of it, the planning, I think when I've seen failures, that's really when it's glaringly obvious is around those pieces. So maybe you agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
No, I agree completely. That's where it fails. Typically, companies that are overambitious, they take a concept, and again, Mac Alliances is a set of technologies, as you mentioned. It's not a business strategy, because the underlying business strategy, your business, and it's so different. There are companies that I've seen that are coming from a very structured modern technology, and they take another step. They're already implementing, microservice because they're starting from scratch. Then an old company comes that have a legacy from 20, 30 years ago. They must recognize that they can't move that fast. It's not just implementing a certain set of technologies and here we go. Because you lose it's too much of a stretch for it. Secondly, it's not business value to it because that's not really their pain points. And get the people in there also. There's a legacy. We all experience that when there is a really good progress in a digital meeting or, digital transformation project, and then suddenly there's a curveball coming. Someone from IT, someone from security, someone from whatever just comes in and said, no, that's not going to happen because they're not aligned, but Two, they're also correct because there's a legacy system here. The old CRM system that we've been working on for a long time cannot export in certain things. There is not a data consistency. That's not the way it works. So you need to respect where companies are coming from. There are, if I take just a short metaphor on SAP, which is a neutral ground in this case, is I don't need to talk about anyone as it is. There are companies that have been migrating from one system to SAP in 6 weeks. And I heard people, executives, say, I don't get it. Why it's so complicated with SAP? Well, get back to where you were from. You were already in a very structured ERP system, now happen to be something that you want to lead from. So it's just migrating data from another. There are so many companies out there that continuously been implementing SAP for 10, 15 years. They never get there because they had absolutely no structure in the beginning. Right. Data is inconsistency. They don't have any sales orders. They don't even know where their customers are, etc. So first and for all, recognize your own, what's the client or the partner, if you're a partner or working from the outside or a company, what is our requirements? What are the business needs? And then back to your point, do it step by step. You will gradually go on. Keep in mind that if this is a possibility, it would be very desirable if we can move into microservices, cloud-based Mac Alliance as it is, so that we are future-proof. It would be easy to do that. But if that's not possible due to security reasons where you don't work that, there's not multi-cloud strategy in the company, whatever, recognize that and see what you can do in order to address that business need and start forking out the business requirements. And then also putting in best of need is a better nerdy. Because you start doing a selection process, and then you have 5, 6, best of need. What is the one that addresses your need for this part of it? Don't aim for the absolute best of it, but rather to plug that hole and see the business part of it. So where I see successful architectural work like this or composability is when you get to orchestration, which means you understand where your data is, the quality of it, who's owning it, who are the one that you need to get in there to ensure that they're a part of the project because they sit on data, security and all that, understanding the stakeholders, orchestrating the project, but also the fundamental data, and then take it step by step. So a characteristic for a successful project, these are those guys that don't make too drama about it. Yeah, no, we shifted that out. We're doing that. Yeah, we're getting there. They're not too laid back, but they're not too aggressive either. They understand and can judge that this is a framework that you should try to go towards. They're not, laser focused on being on the latest version because there's such a gap, right? And you see it in RFPs coming out also. Companies, that's a clear sign of someone that is panicking about the existing legacy systems where they are. They have a big monolith, the website's not working at all, and the RFP is so ambitious. They put everything in there. They want a new system. It's going to be able to fly to the moon and back again. It's going to everything in there. And when you get to know them, you realize, you need this, you need this, you need your commerce. So unfolding it, making it real step by step and forking it out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much to unpack there. And so maybe we need to, we need like a DISC method or Rorschach tests for people who are, managing these systems and managing these projects, because it's, there's so much human psychology wrapped up. It's about people, right?
It is about people. It is. Yeah. It is about people, getting the right people in the room. You know that if you get the right people in the room and see to that they're on board and they are not threatened, there's just a psychology. There's so many projects. 2/3 of all digital projects fails. We'll never get to them because they're overscoped and they don't realize the complexity and they forget the team.
Yeah. And I think top down too. So it's not just, ensuring from a team perspective that everyone's clear, but top down leadership. And this is something that's come up within the Mock Alliance frequently in the past is, who needs to understand what composable means at the C level and the C-suite. And I think it's less, the concern shouldn't be, should a CFO understand the fundamentals of what mock means, but do they understand where we're going as a company? Because this is going to be a potentially multi-year process. Oh, yeah. And understanding the procurement cycles, budgeting, what's the big picture? They have to be enrolled on some level to understand the business optics of it. So you've got to walk a fine line, whether you're embracing mock or it's just a broader composable strategy. You walk a fine line in how much education you have to do internally around the specific dynamics, but I think helping and guiding people to really understand that the big business philosophies, you got to start there. And it's all of this is very much about people. I want to talk really quickly about the metric you just cited, because it reminds me too that we're seeing similar pressures with AI exerted on all of this, right? And I think there's a case to be made for how a composable strategy is energizing the sort of rapid experimentation that we're seeing with different tools, APIs, and the shift. Obviously GraphQL is a big part of where we're seeing kind of the composable conversation go. Adjacent technologies in a pre-existing ecosystem, there are real key advantages to how that's mapping out. But then there's also there's this other metric from MIT about how 95% of all generative AI projects are failing, right? And the reason why I think that's important to also line up here is because it's being attributed to friction, but not friction in the way that we're making things too hard. It's friction in the sense that organizations are afraid to do the work. They want to slap AI into the system with an expectation that's going to deliver the kinds of results that maybe it's been AI washed to do. And we saw the same thing in Composable, where we were over-promising how easy this was. And if you're not willing to do the work, you end up, and I'll call that, if there is such a thing as good friction in the sense that you have to be willing to enroll your teams, understand all the optics involved, go through that process you just described of vetting the best of need types of tools. This is not a go to a marketplace, quickly assemble a couple of technologies, and you're off to the races. I think there are so many lessons in what we're seeing unfold with AI that will benefit from Composable in terms of the enterprise architecture and the approach, but also from the philosophies and the challenges we saw, the failures we saw, and yeah, the idea of composable regret ending up in places where people were either disappointed or they just actually didn't finish the project. We actually saw that happen frequently with customers. I'm not going to name names, but I'll give you one quick use case before I flip it back to you. I was at a conference talking to a vendor who had put a composable stack together with multiple solutions. And this was quite a ways into the project. And there was real unrest at the organization, at the end customer's organization, because they had received an AWS bill that I think was $50,000 over what it needed to be for 1 month. And I don't think this was the kind of enterprise that was too happy I don't think anybody's happy at a $50,000 bill that they didn't expect, but this wasn't so big a company that they couldn't just brush it off. And it created sort of an internal struggle across the stack of solutions, with everyone pointing fingers saying, well, who is responsible for this? Who's accountable? And I think that's one of the problems we face, is a lack of that structure around who is responsible. Is it a shared responsibility model like we see the hyperscalers do? And how do you handle that kind of change management when there's a problem, someone shifts responsibility within that model that could end up in someone not paying attention to the cloud economics or some dimension of how a product is working. So yeah, a lot there, but I want to throw it back to you.
No, but and that's another dimension of the complexity of it. That's unfortunately you need to know what you're doing. It's as simple as that. You need to understand your data sources, the data structure in order to make the right queries, and especially also how you build your technology. We have one example where we have a very composable architecture and distributed, and we were struggling with that. Extreme loads were coming. How that is, and I won't go into the details, but extreme loads, they stretched our system actually to almost the maximum, which we learned about it. But when we're digging into it, the way they were updating the content and the way they've integrated it, they realized that, and we found a spot where they actually loaded enormous amount of data every time there were an update. It was a simple one of those fixes, where the graph went from super high, and an enormous drop down to nothing. Because this was a system architecture integration. It was classic integration challenge that you simply just did. Not only you updated the whole content at the same time, every time there were an update, which means an enormous load. Classic one. So yes, the build were exactly at this point. The bandwidth used, the space used, and everything, and then with one fix cutting down to it. That is the best way to see one of those you can find. But as it comes with integration, there's also difficulties when you get these type of loads, as it is. What is really back and forth? What's coming? And the more complex the architecture is, and the more the systems are, the more they communicate as it, the more complicated it is. So you need to know what you do, and therefore have people in that are committed to work in this. not having people from the CRM team that's working backwards because they don't believe in this project at all. You've seen it, right? People. If you have people on the right side that, yeah, I will fix that. I can do that. Yeah, okay, that's a challenge. No, I figured that out. Actually, we're going to fix on our side because the way we package our CRM structures and the way we export that is unnecessary because we don't need to send that. And when we do an update, that's the type of terminology. That's a sign of progress. That's where people are working together. Let me look at that. Yeah, that's not. No. And then suddenly, you can get, with small fixes, an efficiency in the architecture. You can get an efficiency in the composable landscape. But again, you need to know your sources. You need to know the structure. There are no magic boxes, which is Philip and I we always draw a magic box and you can plug in anything. And it doesn't work that way. So that's what we see. That's why I think we an overambitious, overscoped is a tendency to an overbelief in technology.
Yeah, and also overselling the expectation, and again, go back to AI. I think with all the AI washing we see in the market now, it is evoking, it's echoing the things that I've seen across the composable landscape in the way that things were framed as being very easy. This is going to work in a way that delivers on these expectations. So I think being honest about it, being very clear, and providing the kind of documentation, run books, all the things that we as I think practitioners are aware of that need to apply to the way that we approach this from a structural perspective, not the tech side, but how as leaders within a technology organization, how do we build it the right way so we can avoid the kinds of things like a composable monolith, right? Which we could be built internally. Again, that example of a DXP that's composed by an enterprise, and all this energy is put into building something, and then there's some argument one day between a CEO and a CTO, and they famously walk out of the room upset, and they quit, and they're the only one that has the AWS credentials to some really key part of the ecosystem. Having everything transparent, as open as possible, and I think this is a testament to if we go all the way back to like 2013, where Dries Buytaert and the Drupal project, he was talking about the assembled web and all these tenets of being very modular, and how do we deliver on really being open. So open source is, I think, part of it. Somehow we've focused so much on the proprietary tools that exist out there, but I think open source as the bedrock or the sediment for how we structure this from a philosophy perspective is important too. That we have that kind of openness and freedom in the way that we're able to select the technologies, choose the way that we build it. All of that kind of plays into that belief, but it's being as honest and clear about those requirements, and then having that the redundancy, the things built into the team, so that you can actually deliver on that. And again, those are, where do I see failures and successes? It all comes back to people. I think you could say that these stacks get brittle over time, and we've seen that as well, that, if technology stacks are assembled, things are not updated, or you don't have the right layer of observability over everything, they can become brittle and parts can break, and you can end up in those $50,000 bills. But I think the more fragile part of it is people, right? So if we have failures around how the people work, that's going to probably be a bigger contributor to something getting off the tracks and delivering a failure. And someone wrote Mocklash in the questions. I mean, this is a term that has come up over the last couple of years. I believe in the fundamentals of composable and having standards. I think it's done a lot to build that kind of support. But Mocklash is a real thing. It's a real phenomenon that's occurred.
Oh yeah, it is, no doubt about that. Absolutely, the standard is there, and that is the technologies. This is what best looks like. This is what you can achieve to. But again, back to that, I've been working with, back in the days, I met organizations that I kind of from the start already could just tell you are not able to run any IT project there is. Call it whatever you want to, because the internal politics, the way you're divided, the way you come from. So again, it starts back to people and organization, as we talked about earlier. But you also said one thing that is important when you build this architecture and the composability, that you don't end up with boxes that just connected, and that's simply just the way you draw the line around that. They're interconnected, they're updating. So again, you've created some kind of composable architecture where you can put boxes around it, but essentially they are just integrated to grow it. It's a simple. You've kind of extracted something, but it's more of a diagram in a PowerPoint than an architecture. You don't get any. That's why it's good to have these Mac Alliance that could vet that and say, are we anything close with this? Are we working with these technologies? Are we getting cloud only? Are we doing microservices onto it? That can kind of drive you towards that. Okay, this is not really a composable architecture because we don't get anything in benefit of it. So don't get me wrong, the framework is really good to have, but it's not something we've now decided to implement Mac Alliances, and there we are. Or we have bought this. Another quite interesting thing, which I hear quite often, and I heard that over the years, we bought this system now, so everything's going to be fine. No, the system won't fix it. I mean, we bought Salesforce now, so now all our CRM data will be perfect. No, not really, right?
I don't know anyone who's saying that after they get it.
Yeah. So again, the one that plays it down, dumb it down, I would say, just don't go too ambitious about it. We will get there. You will be able to get there. But what is our business requirements? And the successful projects are not the one that is just big. Yeah, we work on it. Yeah, we have it. Yeah, we're using this. We have if read a lot around the composable, and that's been the composable commerce. Yeah, there are great examples out there that have the check-ins and all that. They're using the personalization engines there, and they built a really nice experience for the customers, and they bring the business value to it. They can now claim that those small things we did. Well, what the things we did? We have now a way higher conversion rates. We have a way better customer experience. We can now focus on promoting the right products. We all those things, right? That is built properly on a composability, yeah. So there are many good examples out there also, but failures, yeah, they are there too.
Yeah. And again, it's being frank about it, so not trying to obscure it in some way. I know a question came up about, going back to data integration layers, and this is an important point that you made too about, integration is friction as well. So I talked about good friction before, if it is such a thing. I made up another word in this conversation too, complexibility. So that's I'm going to keep a little running dictionary here. But I think the idea that you have this, you have data in all these different places, and we have to resolve that problem. We have to be able to bring legacy systems forward with us, silo data in different systems for compliance reasons, for a myriad of different reasons that make it difficult for you to have to either move it or impractical from a budget perspective to be able to make the migration. And we talked a little bit about AI here too. So I think there's an intersection moment around how is AI enabling us to do this better, to do it faster. And we're seeing great gains with AI in a lot of different respects. You talked about migration before. We're seeing this sort of like renaissance of migration capabilities across different platforms around the way that MCP is being harnessed as a layer. So I think there's some really great progress that's being made there. And I want to be clear about this too. Even then, when I'm listening to vendors talk about their ambition with how migration is going to work, we still see that it doesn't account for everything, right? You may have highly complex modules or components or applications that are built within a proprietary system that are not as easy to map to, from a migration perspective. So it's very easy to document how we have a wizard for XYZ. Even in the case of enabling it with AI, it's not that simple. There's still complexity in a ghost in the machine, if you will, of having to go through and deal with something that was unexpected. So you said earlier you need smart people who know what they're doing. That's why I think it's dangerous to frame that we're somehow, anyone who's framing that we need fewer developers, we need fewer people who really understand the fundamentals. I think we're creating a lot of tech debt here with a lot of things. And we're going to need smart people to have their arms around all of this. At the same time, AI is going to help them do it better, right? We're seeing how the co-pilots are enabling them on a day-to-day basis. But I think that within the ecosystem of complexity that exists, yes, AI is going to be able to make significant strides in reducing that. But you still have to have that human in the loop who is smart enough and been through some of the battles here. We can't just pull people who haven't actually experienced these problems. We need to enable them with AI for sure, but I think we need seasoned professionals who have been through slogging this out down in the trenches, and they're able to bring that wisdom to resolve these problems. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another variant. I mean, there's been, as I said, again, history is just repeats. It's just another and a very powerful tool, absolutely. But when I remember when microservices were coming, and what we said then, what I said, well, haven't we been through this before? It's just called service-oriented architecture, and there were people jumping onto it. IT managers, IT architects, especially leaders in this. Yeah, the entire business, we're going to go microservices, all of it. 10 years later, they're still not even close to it because it's a migration that's just jumping onto it. So yes, there will be people say, leave it with me, I will fix it with AI. No, as you say, you need to understand what are you asking, what are you doing? We see it. I say that we have three layers of AI. One is the way we develop our own code as it is and using that. And we're running now a full test where we're using AI to see to that. But there's a tool for it, and it's a tool for developers to ensure that some efficiency. Yes, there will be more efficiency around that. Testing, those time-consuming things will be absolutely developmental. Secondly, is the way you develop things on Umbraco. And that includes Compose, for example, the GraphQLs. Of course, you can use that to easier, faster, but prompts are already there quite advanced. You can be quite quick because it supports you, it knows the data structure, and then it's automatically suggests, the prompts and everything, that it works fine. But AI could help you on that, absolutely, to develop faster on this. Then thirdly is the way you use Umbraco, which means that our MCP server that we're now launching as an open source will be just how you can query the actual installations, update those products, give me those things. So we have quite a good demo that we're using. I demoed it the other day also that. But it also opens up a question to it, the powerfulness of it. Someone said that I would never put that in the hands of our users because you have full access to the entire installations. What if you just update the blog post that is not accurate or up to date with tone, and the AI agent just gets wrong data and deletes all the blog post because based upon their experience or look upon it, it's just all horror scenarios there. So it's a tool again to it. So if you don't know what you're doing, but of course it will be powerful, analyzing source data, quality of it. But what do you do? There are other systems out there that already can analyze data and give them a descriptive word. Salones is a big company doing that, or there's others that can analyze huge set of data in order to make that. But the result is still you get inconsistencies, variants, and all those. So what do you do with them then? Well, can AI sort that out? No, they can point it to it. So it's a tool absolutely to analyze. We see it also in analyze when you do upgrades, where you could, a little bit off topic there maybe, but when I get going. So anyway, so analyzing, here's your bespoken development you've done on a certain version. Be able to analyze that and say, point to these ones might be, these ones may not be working at all, these needs, being able to support there. But then taking the result, properly prompting it first, and then understanding the result and take the actions based upon that. That's where we are now.
Okay. You kind of wrap the whole thing up. And this is, I think, the theme we've been talking about throughout the entire conversation with, what does composable look like in 2026? Where do we go from here? And you're validating what I was doubling down on before. You have to be willing to do the work the right way.
Yes.
Even the prompting examples that you just gave, I think about like where are use cases where, RAG oriented, deterministic types of rules-based AI is a good fit. How do we properly counsel a customer around those choices? Agencies fit into this. Their business models are evolving. They need new ways to be able to create revenue because the wholesale lift and shift migrations are starting to dissipate. The modernization projects are not as, they're just not as lucrative as they used to be. So they're looking for new ways to kind of enter the agent equation. And I think being composable allows them a lot of flexibility in how they experiment with different tools, build, and this applies to the composable mindset applies to that agentic piece too, in the sense that we don't want your agent ecosystem to end at the walls of your own product. You want to be able to move beyond that. There's an agent to agent frontier that everyone's talking about. We're not quite there yet, but the idea for retail brands to be able to transact in that ecosystem beyond your product, without having to migrate everything to your product, right? So that is composable thinking, that I'm not required to have to, rip and replace everything in order for me to get access to these really great CDP tools, or how am I leveraging data at this level? I think you did a great job of kind of saying, here's how our products and our roadmap is aligning to it. But you're evoking the sort of the theme that everyone should be paying attention to, which is, how do we make it practical for people to really understand how composable can benefit them? How do we help them to better understand the things that they should be doing, and not look for the short path? Because it can seem like it's easier based on how marketing is telegraphed. But if you're not willing to do it the right way and go through some of the examples you just gave, that we've been talking about as well, you're maybe destined for failure. And I think we want to help our customers to not fail. We want them to fail forward as part of that experimentation. And that's actually, those are tenets of good software practices. We should be failing gracefully. We should be failing forward, and learn from those. And AI kind of does that.
Yeah. And here's the one-liner towards that, which is a little bit more ambitious, but innovation is never happening within one product. Innovation is happening within an ecosystem. That's what it is. That's the tendency of it. You never innovate within one product. It's within an ecosystem. It's when you can bring in that. And thanks to AI, you can then be able to bring in that type of data. Getting the customers on there, we could see that legal document, all that documentation can be brought in here, because now we can have AI to read that and get that recommendation, because we combine that with the customer data. That's where innovation is created. It's not within one system where you just on the zero. That's where you did. So with composability, you will be able to do that, because you could figure it out. Wouldn't it be good if you had all your customer data, and also the sales CRM's data, which classical ones? There's all the unique things, heavy legal documentations on how you build a truck in Indonesia versus one in US, which is really complicated. I'm just speculating. I'm just ranting here now. That is unique for that company. How do we get hold of that? Yeah, we have that documentation database. How do we make that available? Well, if you have a composable architecture, you will be easily, just export it. We'll be able to import it. It's going to be a massive data set, but we will, thanks to AI, be able to digest that, learn from it, give recommendations that we can combine with the customer data. That's where the innovation comes. That's where we stitch things together. It's never within one system. We see it already, right? Where you can throw AI at a document or a presentation or make things said. That's yesterday's news. No one gets. But it's when you start innovating and getting things together. Some complexity comes in with that also. Security, data quality, who do you trust? What do you train it for? You do sexy demos. We are in the phase now of AI that we are doing sexy demos. Whoever I meet, I always ask, is there anyone in here that have an AI development done, a piece of an agent or functionality based on AI that's in production? And so far, no one said yes. Everyone says, yeah, we demo it. Yeah, we have a demo. We demo it and all that. But it's all because security, and we can't give that. And what is then? What if things goes wrong as it is? What's the quality? So watch out for data quality, because we've seen it when internet came, the whole heyways of the internet, which I was part of, where that everyone will get access to every information in the world in the size of a palm, right? In a device of a palm. That was great. What I missed out was social media, conspiracy theories, and bots. So quality of internet is not what we believed in the beginning. Yeah. So quality is something that needs to come into the AI. Not diverting again. I'm just.
No, I mean, I can thread the needle here. In that's the same challenge we face with performance on AI. When we think about how close can we get the customer to actually having ownership and understanding how they're training their bots, creating the guardrails, building the knowledge bases. That's actually tenets of composability. They're involved in the process. It's open, it's clear, it's transparent, and they're closer to their customer than we are, right? They know their customer. They should be involved in the prompt engineering, in developing the guardrails. They won't know everything, but I think the more we educate as well as support them with the technology solutions, the better the outcome is going to be. And I think that's we want composable to be reflective of creating more orchestrators of it, like more people who are.
And that is.
That, right?
And I can even say composability is a requirement for AI innovation. And also humble enough to say it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. We will of course see in a couple of years' time, extremely, advanced AI agents, talking to agents, productivities that are just beyond what we can imagine. But that's innovation, but it's not within one system. Should we just, for the sake of order here, just check the questions? To be honest, I mentioned the same. Let's see here. I have them in front of me here. To both Matts, all three of you. So is composability so is composable complexity more of a communication issue? Do you believe that explaining the business benefits to strategic, financial, and marketing stakeholders at the earliest stage could help to gain the backing to keep composable initiatives on course when complexity arises? Yes. And it doesn't have to be all that, but keep the one. If there's financial data involved, absolutely understand who is these stakeholders, get hold of this, because there could be some stakeholder coming in from the left, going to curveball, say, that won't happen. No, we are not. No. That is our proprietary data. We keep that in our systems. That's not a go. So, yes, keep the stakeholders so you don't run into those hurdles or roadblockers later on.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely with that. And I think the governance, just to kind of dovetail here, the governance piece of it, I mean, we're dealing with a very complex landscape, multi-dimensional landscape of different, regulatory bodies, your GDPR, CCPA. You cross the pond, you're going to deal with, obviously a much bigger, wiry mess of different types of compliance requirements. And you come to the addressable U.S. market is a whole different ballgame. But we are seeing more regulation. We are seeing more data privacy coming into the equation. So I think having the there's always going to be some degree of complexity that gets injected into this when we have to deal with HIPAA data or FINRA data. So having stakeholder visibility in all of this is really key. And those are the most, obviously, human data, financial data, those are the most sensitive parts of how we as digital practitioners for building experiences have to deal with, making sure everything's encrypted, making sure everything's stored the right way. It's, and composability has created both benefits and also additional challenges around how we have to think about that, because we have multiple systems that have to, maybe there's one system of authority, but again, I go back to that example of accountability. Who's responsible for it? And if an organization is building it themselves versus going to an agency and they're helping to compose that stack, there have to be very clear tenets around who's responsible for what. What does escalation look like? All of those mechanics of how you deal with, when something potentially goes wrong. So this is a very good question around dealing with that, the very tricky area of compliance. Yeah,
I agree. That's yeah. Okay, we talked about backlash. For me, I think it's just a way to, be wordsmithing. There's not a backlash. There is a discussion around it, what it meant to be, and it has a great framework, as we discussed earlier. So whether it's called backlash or composable regret, well, digital projects fail. 2/3 of them. So yes, there's a regret. Is it typically composable regret, which means that this is completely wrong? No, it isn't. It's just the approach of it and what the hinders that that we've discussed through the line. So I think there are companies that have been overdoing it again with ambitions that we talked about, doesn't have the structure in place, the people and the organization and the data structures and all that. So yes, there is a regret that they were so aggressive upon it. So you need to back off a little bit, dumb it down, make it more simple. Is it a regret? No, it's the right way to go. Absolutely. It is the future. It's not that you've done a dead end and you're now into you've now chosen a Palm Pilot in front of that was a too long reference, right? You're still stuck with the Palm Pilot. Yeah. You're still stuck with the Palm Pilot. There will be a new version, right? And I'm still watching black and white TV because waiting for something better. Yeah. That took me 56 minutes to be off the topic completely. I think that's a little bit of a record. I've done really great here, I think.
I've hopefully done a pretty good job of, bringing you back in, or at least spreading it somehow. But that's the power of multiple Mats, right?
Yeah, it is. It's not me. That's the other.
The one thing I wanted to say about backlash, so I think it's unfair to lobby a lot of the responsibility for failures around following the what we'll call a mock enterprise, underlying enterprise architecture. It's composable at large. I think, it's because the Mock Alliance has been divisive at times, just from a general visibility perspective. Joe Sisman called it the coolest tech club in town. All the kids were behind a velvet rope when it first launched. And there was I think a bit of coming to, or a reckoning around the reputation of it. But I think it's done significant work in elevating the visibility around what composable can mean beyond just the marketing of these companies having decided to or electing to be part of a cohort. The other thing I want to talk about too, really quickly, is price and the perception that composable is the promise is I can operate at a lower cost, or there's going to be efficiencies that I can achieve. I think that there's also operationally challenges around the thought process that this is going to save me money. I think that these projects can have a tendency to be maybe even dwarf what a licensing agreement might look like from what we'll traditionally call a monolithic vendor in the space. But that's the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it is, what kind of scalability am I going to get to?
On business value.
Business value, exactly.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think Mock Alliance has helped to create better not arguments, but just sort of messaging around how education, again, internal business practices you can adopt, creating certifications, things like that, have helped to grease the wheels around this. But there's certainly been pushback there and broadly across the composable landscape as well. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on this too.
And you can then further down the road, you could then do a comparison to the ones that have been moved towards and invested in a composable architecture, and not from a cost savings perspective, but it hasn't exploded either, but do it properly. And the value they have and how they can save cost when they want to replace something. There's a new search engine coming out, there's new search, you can replace that versus the ones that sits stuck in you can see the cost for them to unbreak that. It will be enormous. So I'll leave you with one reflections that is also back to the human and how the importance of AI and saving cost in that. Talked to a Dutch partner, and now we're back to AI again. Lovable is a Swedish company, happen to be Swedish, but you can build anything. There are there's alternatives out there also, but they had an alternative to it. Building demos really quick. That then created code, of course. Then allowed Claude to understand that code and could map that into Umbraco code. First question is, of course, what's the quality of that chain, right? It's the whispering game. I whisper something to you, and next one as an outcome, something different. It was quite good, he said. 90% or something was really good. And then you would have a perfect, the demo that you created is perfectly implemented in a very good implementation of Umbraco. Impressive. So how much do you save? Well, in those steps, you save a lot of time. Of course, the demo is really quick and all that, but we're quite good in developing an Umbraco also, so you save some time. But the overall projects would say about 30%. That's the savings maximum, because the rest, how should the demo look like? It's too yellow, it's too big, it's up or down, it's just, and all the requirement specification, the iterations of it. So we shouldn't be tricking fools that would save 95%. You have a certain step. It's back again to the requirements, the prompting, and all those things, right? So that goes also for when you go into an architecture like this. Yes, there are some savings, but it's definitely the business value that needs to be the focus, not a cost reduction issue. And also be future-proofing that the fact that you will not run into these massive costs you get if you're stuck with your own legacy monolith where you can't do anything, which hinders you from even go for new markets, implementing new products, or you integrate with a new company. You can't do anything because you're stuck with it. That cost will always be much higher. Hallelujah.
Yeah, I think hallelujah is the last word. I think I agree with everything you just said, and it was. I think that's, if we can crystallize everything into the impact and value of what composability can mean. It's getting to that place and having these kinds of conversations to sort of shed the light on where the real value is.
Yeah, I like it. I hope people out there and listening also to the recording that this was good for us. At least you got two Matts, very enthusiastic and agreeing.
For the price of one.
The price of one. Even got three of it. It doesn't matter. That was it. So everyone, hopefully this is something that you can bring with you, and we'll continue the discussions. And if you want to reach out to me or to Matt, feel free to do that and continue the discussion, and keep on composing.
Love it. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.